recording everything because I messed up the original recording, and it would be really long anyway, so it's probably faster to record. So let's get started. So the first thing is setting up OBS. So we want to set up OBS in such a way that we could separate audio tracks from all audio sources, meaning we can cut out any audio source in post. So for example, if I had Spotify playing, or if there was somebody talking in Discord and I wanted to make them quieter, louder, or cut them out entirely, I could just do that. So make sure you have OBS installed. I have this version. And what you'll want to do is, for every single audio source that you would like to record, you can hit add application audio capture, name it whatever you want, hit OK, pick the app that the noise is coming from, and then I usually leave this on default, and then hit OK and it'll add it here, and then you should see it being picked up in your audio mixer once you have it added. Now, that won't work on its own. You'll need to do two more things. First thing is you hit the settings tab here, open it up, and by default, all of these will be ticked. What you'll want to do is will only want the one ticked that you want the track on. So for example, I have my game on 1 and nothing else. I have my mic on 2, and then I have Discord on 3 for whoever's talking in Discord. So I'll have those 3 separate. If you have them overlapping, they'll be harder to separate in post. So just usually do 1 per. Okay. The next thing we need to do is go to settings here, hit output, recording, and make sure that your audio tracks here are checked so it actually uses your audio tracks in the recording. Once you have all that, you should be good to go. You can do the same thing for streaming and also separate your audio tracks for your stream and your VOD. So this is how people will stream with music, and then when you watch their VOD, the music isn't there. Okay. That is all for OBS. Now let's open up DaVinci Resolve. Okay, so when you open up Resolve, first thing you want to do is create a new project. So you just hit new project down here. This will be untitled project 4 is what I'm going to name this. And you'll be presented with all of this blank space. The first thing you want to do is you want to add timelines. So if you right click in the media pool, you have to be in this tab here, which is the cut tab. Right click in the media pool and add a timeline. You'll be presented with these settings. By default, timelines are 24 FPS. You don't want them to be in 24 FPS, so we're going to uncheck use product settings and set the timeline frame rate to whatever FPS we're recording on in the format tab over here. So uncheck this, go to the format tab, select 60 FPS, and hit create. And then it'll make one timeline, which is where we can put all our stuff. Generally, I have 2, so make 2 timelines. Same thing here, 60 FPS. For importing media, you can drag and drop media almost anywhere in here, no matter what tab you're in. Usually I think it's these first 3 that are where you're going to want to be. So if I have a video here, for example, this one, I can just drag and drop it right here and it'll load in. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to want to open both of my timelines. The way to do this is you click this and you enable this first option in timeline view options. And then you can hit this plus button right here. There'll be a drop down to select the timeline, and then you can select the timeline you want. So I'll have timeline 1 over here and timeline 2 down here. So now I have both timelines open. You can go ahead and grab your media that you've imported from here, and you can just drag and drop it down here in your timeline. And this will show my video, my audio, with the 3 tracks that I have set up in my OBS, which are my microphone, the game, and Discord, which we set up just a second ago. And we'll be able to modify all of these 3 individually. Okay, so that's how you make timelines and import media. You can also just drag and drop right here straight into the timeline. It doesn't matter. Another thing to keep in mind is once your file is imported into Resolve and you're using it to edit, if you move it in your File Explorer or delete it, it will become invalid. You won't be able to edit it anymore. So make sure that you leave stuff where it is in the File Explorer if you're editing it. Okay. Before we get into any editing, let's do a couple of keybinds. So I have these fast editing keybinds set to WASD. That way I can have one hand set on the left side of my keyboard and the other hand always on my mouse. So I won't ever have to take my other hand off of my mouse to hit things on the right side of my keyboard. So the first thing I have is W on delete selected. So you can just look up delete selected here and set all of these to W. And if you're on default keybinds, you'll find that W is probably bound to something else. So you'll want to do these for all of them. You can hit W here in this menu, find what it's bound to. That's not what you want to be bound to. Search it up over here and then unbind it. Okay, next is A. I binded A to start to playhead, and specifically the ripple one, not any of the other ones. So start to playhead with ripple is going to be on A, and then you're going to want to unbind that from whatever else it is. Next, we're going to have S on split clip. It's going to be S here. Make sure to unbind that from anything else. D is going to be end to playhead, specifically the ripple one, not any of the other ones. And then lastly, Shift W is going to be ripple deletes. All of these. Okay, save that to a preset and hit save and close. Next, let's talk about editing. So the most important thing here is the playhead, which is this red line. This is going to be wherever you're looking. You can move this with your mouse. And you can use left, right arrow keys to move the playhead 1 frame. And you can hold shift and use left, right to move the playhead 1 second, which is 60 frames. You can move the playhead to the beginning and the end of a clip using the up and down arrow keys. And let's see. The magnet, which is this button here, or N on your keyboard, very useful, will make it so that your playhead sticks to things. So when I'm moving this, it sticks to this, sticks to that. Now, if you don't want it to stick to it, you can just hit N on your keyboard, and you'll be able to move it freely. And notice when I let go of left click here, the magnet turns back on. So the magnet is independent whether you are holding the mouse down or not. All right, so for quick navigation tools, you can move left, right with Control plus scroll. So this is going to be left and right. You can zoom vertically with Shift plus scroll, like this. And you can zoom horizontally with Alt plus scroll. So Okay. Next is timeline controls. This is how you lock tracks with this lock button here. A track that is locked will not be affected by anything you do because it is locked. So if you are doing some like big edits and you don't want a certain track to be disturbed, you can just hit the lock button and nothing will happen to it. You can disable a video to see everything under it with this disable video track. This disable video track button. And you can mute audio tracks with this button. Or you can solo them so that you can only hear that one with this button. Alright, next is clip controls. Normally, when you import a clip in, it'll be linked. You can unlink it by right-clicking on it with this and unlinking it. So you'll be able to edit the video and the audio independently. When clips are linked together, it'll tell you if there is a disruption like this. Next thing is fading in and out. You can do this on both video and audio by just grabbing this right here and moving it. So if I do this, this is a fade in. And same thing with the audio. It'll fade in. And you can fade in or out using the same thing. That's the easiest way to do that. Next, if things get too complicated, you can color code stuff by just highlighting whatever you want and hitting clip color. So if I want this to be this color, it can be. All right, next is finding things in the media pool. Generally, you'll have a ton of stuff up here in your media pool for whatever media you've imported into your video. You can just find that by right-clicking here and then hitting Find in Media Pool, which is here. It'll highlight it up in your media pool. Next, you can change audio levels of individual audio tracks here by clicking on the audio track and going up to your inspector here, which you can open by hitting this button, the inspector button, and using this or typing in a number. So if I want this to be 30 decibels quieter, I can do that. If I want my mic to be, 5 louder, there you go. Okay. Next, let's talk about generators and titles. So if you open the toolbox, which can be found by clicking on this effects button here, there's solid colors in here. So I can import colors in here. So I have like blue. So I have just like blue color or whatever. This is how you make solid colors. If you want to like highlight something or cover something up or make a background, you can do it with this solid color node. Quite simple. That's going to be here in generators under solid color. The next thing is text. If you want to subtitle your stuff or put text somewhere, always useful. You almost always want to use text plus, which is right here under titles. The reason you want to use text plus is because it acts like a video track, so you can do anything to it that you could do to a video, so it's easy to animate and modify. And you can change the text on it by just clicking on it here, going into your inspector, go to title, and then type whatever you want, change the font, whatever it might be, and there's a ton of other settings for it here. And then in settings, you can change the general stuff, like zoom, position, etc., etc. Okay, let's talk about what you actually do with the keybinds. The first keybind is going to be S. So move your playhead around and hit S. That's going to split the clip anywhere you want it to split. So they'll just add a cut. And now you can use these cuts to do other things. So just have one cut here. So if you select a chunk and you want to get rid of it, W is delete. That'll leave a hole here. Or if you hit Shift delete, it will close the hole. So what ripple does is it closes the empty space. So this is ripple delete, which is Shift W. The next thing is start to playhead, which will be A. If I hit A, it'll delete this chunk here and close a space, which is everything on the left of my playhead, and then it'll close the space. So if I hit A, it'll close that space. And then if I hit D, it does the opposite. So it grabs everything on the right and then closes the space. So if I grab on here, it'll grab everything on the right and then close the space. So it'll delete this and then bring all of this in here. And remember, if you hit any of these keybinds without having anything selected, it will do it on everything. And if you have stuff selected, it'll only do it on the thing that's selected. So if I selected just this video track, it'll only cut this video track and not the audio. Next, all the simple keybinds. Control C is copy, Control V is paste, Control Z is undo. Redo is different in the software. It is Control Shift Z. If you want to select everything after your playhead, you can hit Alt Y, which will be very useful because sometimes you have a big space that you want to close without ruining something, so you can just hit Alt Y and then drag it manually with your mouse. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is using transform, which is quite simple using the inspector up here. You just grab whatever video clip that you're looking at, and you have a bunch of settings here. So you can adjust the zoom, or like the left, right position, up, down, etc., etc. And you can hit these little reset wheels up here on the right side to reset to whatever the default is. There's a ton of other stuff here: cropping, composite modes, opacity, stuff like that. The inspector has different info depending on what you're looking at. So if I'm looking at the audio here, I can adjust the volume, pitch, etc., etc., equalizer. Now, the transform is really useful for making something look a certain way, and also useful for doing animations, but you won't want to do animations directly on the video track itself, because once you do that, it's stuck like that forever. So what you'll want to do for animations is to use adjustment clips, which you can find here in your toolbox, effects, adjustment clips. You should hit the favorites button over here so you can find it wherever you want, whenever you want, because you will be using this all the time. So if you drag an adjustment clip onto the track here, it's just a clip that does nothing, but you can edit it like a video, and it affects everything that's under it. So if I have this adjustment clip here, and I want to zoom in, for example, it will be zoomed in as long as I am on this adjustment clip. If I'm outside of it, it'll be zoomed out. Now, the reason this is so useful is if I do an animation here on this adjustment clip, and I decide that I want to change the video under it, I can do that without ruining the animation. So I could just move the adjustment clip or something like that, or change the video out. Or if I have multiple layers of video, let's say I have like, I don't know, like a picture or something on top of the video that I also want to animate with the video, I can just put it here in between it, and the adjustment clip will affect everything underneath it. Let's grab an example of that. So let's say I have this picture of this Pokeball. I can animate it with this. So normally it would look like this. And I can zoom in on both the Pokeball and the game under it with this adjustment clip. Always try to use these adjustment clips when you are transforming something up here in the inspector tab, if you can. it generally makes things easier because if you want to change things in the future, you won't have to go and edit the original clip. You can leave that alone. You can just move the adjustment clip around. Now, the reason that this is so important is because of keyframes. So the way keyframes work is anywhere in the software in which you see this diamond, that means you can keyframe something. So here's how keyframes work. Wherever your playhead is, you can click the keyframe to add a keyframe. So it'll be 1x zoom at this point in time. And let's say 1 second after, I want another keyframe in which this is zoomed in 2 times. Just type 2 here. And the keyframes will automatically go between one and the other keyframe within this allotted time. So if I click the play button here, within that 1 second period, it'll change from 1x zoom to 2x zoom. Now, this looks like shit because the animation isn't smooth. What you can do to smooth these out is hit this spline key right here, and you can see the curve of the graph. Anywhere in which it isn't smooth, you can just grab the node and hit one of the curve buttons to add a curve. So now this is smooth. So now this will look something like this, which looks a lot better. You can see where each individual keyframe is by clicking this keyframe button here. I'll show that there's one here, and there's one here. You can also go in between your keyframes within a certain clip by hitting the left and right arrows here. In between the keyframes, there will be nothing. It'll be going in between, so you can see these numbers be going up and down. You'll want to edit the actual keyframes themselves, in which it'll show up as red whenever there is a new keyframe. So now that we have this zoom in, the reason we put it on this adjustment clip is if I want to put something under it or change the video out, I can. So I can move this wherever I want and it'll do it somewhere else. So let's move this somewhere else. I don't know, maybe like over here. Wait for that to load. And we'll see it works over here as well. So we don't actually ever have to change the keyframes around the original clip. If we did these same keyframes on the original clip rather than the adjustment clip, we would have to move each keyframe rather than moving the entire adjustment clip. Okay. Now that we have this effect that we like on this adjustment clip, we want to use it everywhere. We want to use it, you know, multiple times around wherever we want to zoom in on something, and we want to save this effect for later. The way we can do that is with power bins. So to enable power bins, you hit these 3 buttons right here, and you hit show power bins. And that should open this power bin here, in which you can do whatever you want. I have 3 folders in here. You can create some folders in here for effects, special effects, text, or sound effects and text. So like, for example, I have a sound effects library here that's just a bunch of sound effects. I can drag and drop these on any project I want. The reason the power bin is so powerful is because this power bin shows in any project you're on, not just this one. So no matter what you're working on, you can access media within your power bin and use it. So if I wanted to save this adjustment clip, this zoom in here, what I would do is I'd rename it by going to the file thing up here in the inspector, rename it whatever I want, which will be, this will be a 1 second zoom in. And I can just drag and drop this straight into my power bin up here. And now no matter what project I'm in, I will be able to access this file. And I'll be able to drag and drop this wherever I want. There you go. All right, I'm gonna get rid of this because I'm not going to keep it. But you can do the same thing with, you know, text, media files, whatever it is, anything that you're planning to reuse a lot. You can do that in this power bin. Okay. keep in mind that if you have the power bin open, anything that you drop into the editor here will also spawn in the power bin. So if you're adding new media to your project and you don't want it to be in your power bin, make sure that it's not open. So I usually leave it on my collections, which is everything in the project, when I am importing new footage into my project. Now, let's talk about audio. Over here is the Fairlight tab on the bottom. And this is where you control your global audio settings per track. You can adjust the levels of entire tracks here. So if I want everything on track 1, which in this case is my game audio because we set it like that in the OBS settings, let's say my game is always 30 decibels too loud, I could just take this here and move it down 30. And now everything on that track will be 30 quieter. This is good for editing entire tracks, but not good for editing individual clips. You'll want to edit audio of individual clips in the Edit tab here with the inspector, and you can edit the entire track with the Fairlight tab here. So big things here, small things in the Edit tab. They do add on top of each other. So what you do in one place will stack on top of what you do in another place. There's also dynamics and an equalizer here. So if you double click on these, you can add compressors, expanders, gates, limiters, whatever it might be here to fit your needs. And same thing applies to the equalizer. And you can do this per track. All right, next is adding new audio tracks. When you right click on the audio thing over here on the left side, you can add track. There's two general options that we'll be using, mono and stereo. Stereo is different wavelengths in both ears. Mono is the same. So generally everything uses stereo except for microphones, unless you have two microphones, one for each ear, which most people don't. So most things you'll want to use stereo, and then for your microphone you'll want to add mono. So let's add a microphone track here, which is mono. And you can rename it by double clicking here, microphone. And we can name our other things. We can name game, do this is just mic from the recording, I guess recording mic, and then this is going to be Discord. Now that we have a mono track for a microphone, we can use it as a voiceover track. So let's say I want to record a voiceover. The way I do this, first of all, is I need to have DaVinci Resolve pick up my mic. So you go to the top left and DaVinci Resolve, go to Preferences, and go to Video and Audio I/O. Make sure your input and output device are set to the correct things. Once you have that, you can go to your mic track, which in my case is audio 4, my mono track. Hit the input button up here for audio 4. Hit input, and then assign it to my mic. Hit patch. And now, if I hit this R button, hello, it will pick me up. So this is armed for record, and obviously my voice is playing back right now. I can hit this mute button, and now I can't hear myself, but it's still armed for record. The way you actually record is you hit this button right here. Hello, hello, hello. And then you hit the square here to stop. Now if I listen to this over, there I am. So that's how you record a voiceover. Now that we have all this stuff set up, so we have all these tracks set up, let's say we have some dynamics, equalizer, things are different volumes. Generally, it's going to be the same across every project you do, especially because your OBS settings are set a certain way. So like my OBS settings are always set for these 3 audio tracks to always be the same. We can save this so that we don't have to do this ever again. Go to Fairlight, or Presets Library, filter by configuration presets, and you can hit Save New to make a new preset. So here I have my YouTube preset. If I hit Apply, that'll load that in. So here is the thing that I normally use, which is all of these tracks. And you can see that these are all at different volumes, tuned the way I like them, and I have some dynamics here as well. All right, so now that we've talked about audio and editing, you'll be able to edit a bunch of stuff, and it's going to get pretty chaotic. The way that I normally do this with the two timelines, the reason that I open the two timelines is that I use the bottom timeline to kind of bulk edit like really big footage. So this is like, footage of this entire game, which is 24 minutes long. And I don't want 24 minutes of stuff in my final cut that I have to deal with. So I'll put it in this bottom cut here. I'll grab, using the S key, I will slice a bunch of parts that I like. Let's say I like this one. And I will drag and drop it into the final cut here where we'll actually edit what I want in the video. So I can grab a bunch of chunks of stuff that I like. Let's grab a chunk here, and then a chunk here. And let's say I want this to be longer, just more of it. I can just drag it here, and the programmer will remember what was there in the video clip. So now I have some of this, and then some of this from in the game. You can also adjust the volume of what you hear. This is not going to be the volume of the output. This is just the volume of what you hear while you're editing with this here. This dim just makes it quieter, and then obviously this does this mutes it. Okay. So you're going to notice that this is laggy, and I barely have anything here. Once I start editing it, it's going to get way more laggy. So what I'm going to do is I can make proxy media. So what is proxy media? Proxy media is like a really shitty version of the footage that you're editing that's only used for editing. So I'm going to use a super shitty version of this original footage, which is 1440p 60 FPS, while I'm editing. But when I export the project into a video file, it will use the original quality footage. So the way I do this is I go to the options button down here on the bottom, project settings, bottom right, scroll down, optimized media and render cache. These first two things we're going to need to change. So proxy media resolution, you can make the resolution as good or as bad as you want. The lower it is, the faster it will be. So let's say I want 1/16th quality. It'll be really bad while I'm editing. And I can change the media format as well. LB is the fastest here. So I'll change that. Hit save. And if I go down here to the media tab in the bottom left, I'll be able to grab my footage. So usually what I'll do at the beginning of my project is highlight, like drop all of my like big files in. I'll have like 10 hours of gameplay or whatever. I'll highlight all of it, right click, and hit generate proxy media. Okay, it doesn't want to do that. All right, maybe it doesn't want to be that bad. Let's do quarter. There we go. And this can take a while. This is a 24-minute video of 1440p 60 FPS footage. And it's going to take a couple of minutes. So when I drop like 10 hours of gameplay in here, I'll just highlight it, all of it, hit generate proxy media, and just go do something else. All right. It has been about 7 minutes, and it is done. Now you can see it says PXY here with this pink tag on the bottom. And when I'm editing, you can see that it uses really low resolution footage. Now, if you don't have this, the way to turn this on is you hit playback, proxy handling, and make sure that you hit prefer proxies. That way it'll always use them if you can. You can turn them off, same way here, or up there where I said before, proxy handling. So now our playback is a lot smoother. All right, so this is the best way to optimize lag easily. You'll notice there's 2 more tabs here that I haven't covered. Fusion is kind of like Pandora's box. If you learn it, you can literally do anything, but it's a lot more complicated and isn't within the scope of this video. Color is for color grading. You generally won't use this for anything if you are making gaming videos. Every so often I use it to put a prop in a scene and change the lighting, but generally you won't touch this unless you're actually filming something with a camera. Lastly, we have the Deliver tab, which you will use to deliver your final product. So the way you can do this is you name your file, example footage, you choose a location, hit save, and I like to change the quality to this one here, and hit add to render queue, and then hit render. This will render my video, and if I look in my videos folder, I will find my example footage.mov, and when I watch it, it is in the full quality rather than the proxy quality. Now, lastly, let's do 2 examples of some things. First one will be a quick zoom out transition, which I use a lot. So to start off with, you can put an adjustment clip above where we want to transition, which is in between these 2 clips. We could start at the beginning zoomed in. We can go about maybe 10 frames, and then zoom out back to 1. So now when I watch this, the transition will zoom out. Now, this looks a little rough, so let's smooth out the curve with the spline panel here. You can see the transition looks pretty smooth. You can go ahead and save this in your power bin once you have it the way you like it. Go ahead and rename it in the file here. Quite simple. Okay. The next thing is some subtitles. If you plan on making any short form content, or if you just like doing animated subtitles, these are very, very important. So let's grab some text plus. And if we put this on top of our transition here, the text will be in the same place no matter where we are on the transition. But if we put it below the transition, this, the zooming will be part of it. So it'll be like this. So let's put it below, sure. So the way I like to do this is I'll fade out the end of my text a little bit, and I want it to pop in at the beginning. So let's type something here. Do hello world, and we can set it to whatever text we want. Let's set it to cat comic. You can download any font you want from the internet, and it'll show up here, by the way. So make sure to restart the software after you download a font, otherwise it won't show up. This is a little hard to read because there's some white around this. And the way we can create some contrast is by adding an outline. So in the text settings here, I can go to layout. Let's see, where is it? Shading here. I'll go to number 2, which is the red outline. I'll enable it, and I'll change the color from red to, let's say, black for some extra contrast. These outlines are looking a little thin, so I can make them thicker right here. Get them nice and thick. There we go. So now no matter what, we can read the text, despite what the background is. And if I want to do even more, let's say can add a drop shadow to it. So I could just go to effects drop shadow, or wherever it is. Filters. Under open effects filters, it's called drop shadow. We can just drag and drop it right here. So now it has a drop shadow as well. So now we have our text. Let's do over here. Sure, it just appears on the screen. We want this to pop in. The way we do that is we can use keyframes. I don't want to keyframe this on an adjustment clip because I just want just the text to do this, not everything on the screen. So I'm going to click on the text here, my video tab, settings, the beginning. I want it to start as small, and then I want to go forward 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sure, 7 frames. And then we will do back up to this big. Okay, so now it pops in and it fades out. I can go ahead and move this like down here. Sure. And the way we line this up with whatever we're saying, if we're subtitling something, is we can grab this, hold Alt, and then drag it with your mouse. This will copy and paste it. So what I'll do is I'll copy and paste this text. It'll come with all the animation and everything. Whenever I say a new couple of words, I'll put it here, here, let's say here. You'll want to line this up with whatever audio you're subtitling. And I just changed the text. This is a animated pop in. Sure. Now it does that. Then it fades out at the end. Quite simple. So there's your 2 examples. If you want this to be even smoother, if you can see the delay in the 7 frame animation, you can smooth these out as well if you really feel like it. But you have to do that for all of these because I forgot to do it at the beginning. But once you have it on one, you can copy it on all the other ones. So if I make another one, this one will also be curved. There you go. There you go. All right, hope you found this useful. Let me know if you have any questions. You can message me on Discord if you have any specific questions about this